Harlem, New York City, an ever-evolving community and a touchstone for American culture.
Our guest was born here in 1919. At age 12, she started working, performing as a dancer, and she hasn't stopped.
How many people at 90 years old can make a living involved with dancing? Me.
And in her life, Norma Miller's made history as the queen of swing dancing. She reigned through an historic era at Harlem's Savoy Ballroom in the 1930s when pulsating big band swing music brought blacks and whites together on the dance floor. And over the years, she also fought the color barrier alongside friends like Louis Armstrong and Sammy Davis Jr. We met at Harlem's historic Lenox Lounge, New York's last surviving club from the swing era, where Norma was displaying yet another talent, stand-up comedy.
Imagine me dating a man my age. This sucker be chasing me around the room, and by the time he caught me, he done forgot what he was chasing me for.
We sat down to talk about her groundbreaking career and what's kept her going all these years, non-stop.
She's got the beat. Norma,
Yo,
welcome to My Generation.
thank you.
Now, first thing I'm wondering about is, a lot of people start working in their youth. They're 12 years old, 13 years old. They could be a ventriloquist. They could be working on the farm. They could be a painter. But very few are still doing it 80 years later. What has been the driving force that's kept you going all these years?
Because it's the only thing anybody paid me to do. I couldn't do anything else. So I've danced all my life because I always got paid. I was a professional dancer who got paid. And that was why I continued doing it. And it was always through dancing that I was able to make a living. So when I wasn't physically able to perform in certain ways, I began producing dancing, writing about dancing, creating dancing. So dancing has always been a part of my life up until I'm 90.
Well, okay, but beyond that, beyond the paycheck, because they all
Exactly.
like to get a paycheck, there has to be some other force within you that's kept you going all these years.
Because I loved doing what I was doing. See, when you love doing what you're doing, it's not work. It's a joy, and dancing was always a joy. And of course, I came along with just the best music in the world. I never wanted it to end. So I kept creating Basie over and over and over again. And that's basically why, even today, I still create Basie. As simple as that. I love the music.
The music is I've seen you
Perfect.
perform, and when I watch you perform, I can see the music in you. So let me ask you this. When you're swing dancing, right, to go back,
Let's go.
when you're swing dancing, you're flying through the air, you're sailing across the floor. What does that feel like? Can you
Better
just-
than, because we were creating something in America that no one has ever done before. We created a dance here in Harlem. So we were the best at it. You got to remember, when you're the best at it, you just don't want it to end.
But physically, what does it feel like to be
It
flying
felt because we were in heaven. We were the best. Remember, we went to the top of the chart. We played Radio City. We played the Capitol. We played Hollywood. You can't get better than that. So I always tried to find a way to keep it going.
What made you fall in love with swing dancing? What was there about the movement, the music, that made you fall in love with it?
Best music that ever. The whole swing era was just the most perfect era. From 1935, the first Harvest Moon Ball we had here in New York, it was just the greatest music in the world. Nothing ever topped that. Nothing ever. Nothing. And remember, nobody was ever better than we were.
Let's compare swing dancing to other kinds of dances in terms of degree of difficulty. Ballet, tap, modern dancing. How does swing stand up?
Well, you got to understand, when I was a swing dancer and the dancing sort of faded out, I decided to enroll in one of the greatest schools here in New York called the New Dance Group, what was created by the top teachers in New York. So I became a student of these dances, and I studied Hanya Holm, Charles Weidman, and then I ran into a dancer called Martha Graham. And it was the most excruciating time in my life that I decided after 6 months with Martha Graham, Hanya Holm, and the New Dance Group, I quit and went back up here to Harlem and worked back at Small's Paradise and started back dancing jazz, which was the type of music I danced to, and it was the only dance for me, and I've been doing it ever since.
You think that swing dancing is more difficult than modern dance or
No,
ballet?
modern dancing is more difficult. Swing is natural, it's not a problem. But when you have to go to what Martha Graham was doing, that to me was the worst that ever. I just never encountered such pain. I mean, I quit and I went back to jazz, and I was doing it ever since.
All right, let's talk about another component of your longevity, another component of your success. There have been recent psychological studies that are linking happiness, success, and longevity. Have you always been a naturally happy person, or is it something you trained yourself?
No, dancing always was a happy moment for me. So do that what you love. It's not a job. Ask Louis Armstrong. He'll tell you the same thing. It's when you enjoy doing what you're doing, you don't even know you're doing it.
What would you say that you learned from Louis Armstrong that enabled you to continue going the way you've been going?
I met Louis Armstrong in 1939 in a show here in New York at the City Center called Swing is a Dream. And the show was the biggest flop that ever happened on Broadway. And I mean, it was a big turkey. And I was crying because I couldn't believe a show like this could fold. And it was Louis Armstrong who said to me, never cry about a show closing, baby. There's always going to be another one. And that was 1939.
And how has that served you?
All my life.
How so?
Because there's always going to be another show. How many shows did I do since then? I was with Duke Ellington, Jump for Joy, which was a great time. And I was with Louis Armstrong, and then I was with Basie, which was just the greatest time. And nothing could ever compare to Count Basie. When you have an opportunity to dance to that music, oh, it was just wonderful.
Let me ask you this. Suppose we have someone watching right now who says, you know, I want to be doing the same thing Norma's doing, but in my field. I'm not a dancer. I'm doing something else. I want to keep going until I'm 90, 91, 92, 93. What kind of psychological tips, advice, what kind of tips would you offer to somebody who wants to really go nonstop like you?
You have to love what you're doing. The word is love. That's all it is. Simple as that. Remember, we created something here in Harlem that was never created anywhere else in the world. I was born here. I was born to this music. And I was a part of it, and I was a part of its progress. And remember, I always made a living doing it. I still make a living doing it. I mean, how many people at 90 years old can make a living involved with dancing? Me.
Yeah, good for you. I mean,
you have to hire me, you got to pay me. And they pay me to go all around the world.
So money has been a big motivating factor all the way.
You got to pay the rent. You learn in New York, you got to pay the rent. The landlord said, Miss Miller, we're going to have to raise your rent. I said, good, because I can't. He said, all right, we will evict you. I have been evicted so many times. I had drapes that matched the sidewalks. Had to throw in the comedy.
That's funny. Bill Cosby says that you're a very funny comedian. Where did that come from?
Well, I was thrown into the mix because of Red Fox. Red said, your legs are getting stiff, your knees are going to be going. You've got to learn to tell jokes. Now, he had a club in Los Angeles at the La Cienega. This was the beginning of the first black comics making the breakthrough. Now, I'm thrown into the mix. There's Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Flip Wilson. This is every night at the Red Fox Club, and I'm their MC. And I'm learning how to be the person that can talk and tell jokes, because they always had a Monday night was open, that was an open mic. Out of this came Murray Langston, the unknown comic, Kip Adada, Johnny Dark, Cheech and Chong. And I was there and Richard Pryor, I'm bringing them on stage. So I'm learning how to take dancing and apply it to comedy. And that's what I did. I began to be a comedian, and we were the first all-woman comedy special that was done out in Los Angeles. Out of that came Sandra Bernhard.
Dancing.
Comedy.
And comedy. A lot of people could not make that connection.
Oh, well, you have to make it, because comedy is something that I learned from Red. And I wrote his first book, The Red Fox Encyclopedia of Black Humor. But I love being around the comedians because now I'm not dancing as much, but I'm learning another profession. And of course, I began writing about it. I used to sit in the back and write my material. And I, like Red said, write a line every day. And every day, 7 days, you'd have 7 lines. 30 days, you got 30 lines, and then you don't have to mess with my act. And I was the first opening act for Red. And that's how that
That's
started.
really good.
Oh, yeah.
And now, that's what brings you to the Lenox Lounge, right?
Yes.
Doing stand-up here at the Lenox Lounge for Paul Mooney. How's that feel?
A thrill. I want to do it so badly. I am aching because he has the great audience. He has my audience. And this is what I do on the side. I mean, I've always done comedy. I write comedy. And I write music. I write songs because I never had a Grammy, so I want to go to the Grammys one day and hope my song is chosen.
Beyond the paycheck,
Yes, dear.
beyond loving what you're doing,
Yes, dear.
what's one more thing that's been a driving force in your life?
Poverty. You got to work not to be in poverty. Phyllis Diller said it, so, and it's a pure statement. That's why she kept going.
So, I mean, literally a fear of being poor?
Yes. Yes, can you imagine being 80 and 90 and poor in New York City?
Scary.
It's scary. Yes, indeed. So I keep looking for gigs, and please hire me.
Norma, the concept of retirement and Norma Miller don't go in the same sentence.
No, not at all. There's not even an alternative, believe me.
But let me ask you this.
But retire to what? You see, as long as you can do something and you can reach out. What I love most is I'm on stage with kids, my grandchildren. I can relate to my grandchildren on stage. They dance like me. And I go every year to Louis Armstrong jazz camp, and they're kids, 14 and 15 years old, and they relate to me. You don't get old when you have that kind of response. We work with kids every summer, and you can't believe the joy I feel when I hear our music being played by the young generation coming up, because at one time we almost lost it. We lost our music. I mean, people are talking about rap. There's no music. But we got kids in New Orleans that's playing Louis Armstrong's music, and we can't let that go. We have to keep that going. And there's 15 and 14 and 13-year-old kids playing Louis Armstrong's music. That gives me another life.
You said something that really jumped out at me. You said you don't get old.
You don't.
When you're doing that. Expand on that.
Because you don't. Because you realize when you can reach beyond 2 and 3 generations and they can dig what you're talking about, that's a very special thing. And I get rejuvenated with them, especially when I hear our music being played by 14 and 15-year-old kids. The most marvelous thing this year, we had a group of kids in New Orleans. Here was a 15-year-old boy named John Michaels. I don't know where he came from.
Was he channeling Louis Armstrong?
Just like him. He sang, he scat, he played trumpet. I mean, this is a 15-year-old kid, and I mean, not just playing good, but we have a whole lot of kids like that now.
That's fabulous.
Oh, it is fabulous.
Let me ask you this, Norma.
Yeah.
When Duke Ellington says, don't mean a thing,
That's right.
if it ain't got that swing,
That's
what's
right.
that mean to you?
It means just that, because it ain't swinging, it ain't. Listen, if you don't dig swing, baby, you don't dig fried chicken. And how could you live in America and not eat fried chicken?
That's what it means to you. So somehow swing, Duke Ellington, and fried chicken are all in one sentence for Norma Miller.
Definitely. Because the greatest invention we ever created to this world was fried chicken. Of course, the Colonel is getting credit. But who ever heard of a white man in a white suit in a kitchen frying any chicken?
All right, hold on a second, Norma. That's very funny. One other thing I want to ask you about the nonstop nature of your life. Your mother's quote. What was it?
I used to say to her, you see, my father died the month before I was born. And my mother was an immigrant. My mother was 20 years old. She's an immigrant with 2 children. And it was St. Philip's Church that sort of was helping her. And I used to say to my mother, you know, how did you do it? I mean, the difficulty, you know, we're talking about 1919, 1920. I mean, this was a very difficult time for black women in Harlem. And my mother used to simply say, listen, when you ain't got a horse, you ride a cow. And that was always my mother's statement, and it really is true. You find a way. How you do it, you don't know, but you find a way. And
That's been a driving force?
always through my life. That's my new book. When you ain't got a horse, you ride a cow. You got to keep going. I mean, I got to live to be 100 to get out of debt.
I want to do another interview to find out how you got that far in debt. All right, let's talk about some groundbreaking things in your life. I mean, truly groundbreaking things. At the Savoy Ballroom, the 30s, blacks and whites dancing alongside each other,
Right.
sometimes dancing with each other.
First place in the world.
Yeah. Police didn't like it.
Oh, nobody liked it.
Well, the people who were dancing liked it.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, you see, you had the Maoris of the South trying to put their Maoris here in New York City. And they would try to accuse of prostitution and all this kind of thing at the Savoy Ballroom. But the Savoy Ballroom was one of the best run places in New York. I mean, you never heard of any confrontation at the Savoy Ballroom. They didn't allow it. And consequently, this didn't rub good with a lot of people. Because my friend Ernie said when he came to New York and he would get in a cab to come uptown to the Savoy Ballroom, the cab driver would say to him, don't go, because you know how they are up in Harlem, they rob you and all this kind of, and this was from his own mouth, I heard it. So this was a thing that was set up to keep people from coming to the Savoy Ballroom, but you couldn't stop it.
Right,
It was
and
the
that-
driving force. We had the best music in the world, we had the best bands in the world, and we had the best people in the world.
Were you aware at the time when the blacks and whites were dancing next to each other and sometimes dancing together that you were making history?
No, we never thought about it. But see, we didn't go outside the ballroom. We never thought about the fact that it was something that was different in America. We thought the Savoy was America. You remember when I was a 15-year-old girl, I never even thought about the fact that, because all my life I've always seen white people in Harlem. That's all you saw at night. It was the furs and the diamonds. So I always thought white people always belonged to Harlem. So it wasn't until I began to realize there was an issue in our country. Remember, I was in my 20s before I even knew the meaning of segregation. Yeah. We didn't have it in Harlem because I never went out of Harlem.
Other groundbreaking things you've done: the first female black act to play Las Vegas, the first female black act to play Miami, facing Jim Crow laws, facing prejudice. What did it take inside you to keep going and prevail?
Well, it didn't bother us because remember, when we hit Miami, just think, I'm amongst Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanelli, Thurgood Marshall, Joe Louis, the best of the best. We were sitting around all the time. I mean, they came around us. Everybody wanted to be where we were. So it didn't bother us to the place where we felt like we were neglected. You had an issue in a place where we knew it was going to eventually was going to change. And we knew, and we was working on that, and that's what Thurgood Marshall and them were doing.
How would you say that you, Norma Miller, were a force in the civil rights movement, in your own modest way?
Well, we kicked down doors. We kicked down doors. You see, some of the pioneers, like Louis Armstrong was the man that put a face on jazz. He was accepted, and once he gave white people the respect. White people gave him the respect to accept him. Well, when he walked through, remember, he didn't come through alone. He came through with. When Sammy Davis walked through Las Vegas, he didn't walk alone. Remember, when he opened the door, a lot of us went through, and they couldn't. And Vegas just didn't accept the fact that there was going to be a separation. That killed this segregation thing in Vegas. This happened all over the world. When Joe Louis became champion of the world, he opened the doors. And when he retired undefeated champion of the world in Miami, I was sitting right beside him. And there, The place was loaded with reporters everywhere. This was Joe Louis, the champion. And they were saying to him, Joe, you're retiring. What are you going to do now? You're going to play golf? And he turned to one of the black dancers and said, what day do they allow us to play golf? And they said, they allow us to play golf on Wednesday. And Joe turned to the reporter and said, I'll be playing on Wednesday. These things gave you pride. To know the best there was. Nobody was better than Joe Louis.
But Norma, what about the other side of the pride? The anger of literally having to deal with the prejudice, having to deal with working at the Flamingo in Las Vegas, and then taking a bus to the west side.
The prejudice didn't bother us because remember when we played Vegas, and that last show when the bus pulled up and took the whole show, bass, back to the west side, everybody came to the west side. Because we were jumping all night. We had a lot of fun. Things was bad, but we had a lot of fun. A lot of people didn't like what was going on, but we knew there was going to be changes. There was no question about it.
But it's very evident to me that you are in possession of a hugely positive attitude.
Yes. I was born in New York. See, I was 20 years old before I even understood the meaning of segregation.
But where's that positive attitude come from? Not everybody who's born in New York has that positive attitude like that.
But you don't have that feeling of, I'm not as good as you are. I mean, we just didn't have that kind of feeling. Remember, we were the best that ever did it. And everybody came to us. So we was not neglected at all. Everybody wanted to do what we did.
I'm not trying to put you like on,
I know,
psychiatrist's
I understand what
couch.
you're saying.
But I'm just curious, is there any way you can analyze your own ability to be so positive in the face of what really infuriated
We never had to face it. Remember, wherever we were, we had more white people following us than the world. I mean, I'm sorry, but you people wanted to always be around us.
Exhibit A.
Well, it was the people that wanted fun, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, we had fun. You couldn't imagine traveling with Basie. Even Sinatra said he never went on a bus again until he traveled with Basie and them again. It's the kind of fun that the outside world didn't affect us. Because we knew, listen, Martin Luther King and them, they were busy taking care of it. That was their job. We used to send them blankets and whatnot. And that's all we can do. I never marched with them because I wasn't about to march. Because I never went into the state of Georgia. I never went into the state of Mississippi. I still haven't gone into the state of Mississippi. But things have changed,
I'm going to mention 3 names, and I want you to tell me what about these 3 great black performers was groundbreaking?
Yeah.
Because you're a groundbreaker with swing dancing. Let's start with Sammy Davis Jr. What was groundbreaking about Sammy Davis Jr.?
World's greatest entertainer. I mean, he was better than Sinatra. But listen, Dean Martin said, roses are red, violets are pink. If I had your talent, I wouldn't have to drink. Nobody was better than Sammy. So the best of Vegas recognized Sammy. You know what that means in a place like Las Vegas when you're the best. There just was nobody better. So when he couldn't go someplace, Sinatra and them just wouldn't allow it. Mm-hmm. So he broke the barrier for entertainers in Las Vegas. Lena Horne didn't do that. Sammy did that because of Sinatra.
Next, groundbreaking, Louis Armstrong.
Oh, well, he was the ambassador. He was just the best. I mean, the world recognized Louis Armstrong. He's the most recognized voice. We just recently we went to Dizzy at Lincoln Center, and the wonderful world of Louis' music, and it's packed. I mean, his music. Oh, he was the one who opened all the doors for all of us.
One more.
Yeah.
Groundbreaker, Duke Ellington.
Oh, well, you're talking about the Ellington. I mean, who was better? I mean, he was our Mozart. I mean, I don't think Duke ever thought of him being black. Was Duke black? I mean, he was just like no one else. Mm-hmm. And he was far above in mentally, Duke Ellington always felt, when we were around Duke Ellington, you were in the presence of the Lord. And when we used to leave Duke Ellington, we used to do this. When we left, we'd do
In that leopard robe that he wears.
He was without a doubt like no one you ever want to be around. I mean, he was just like no one else. I've never been around anybody like Duke Ellington.
Has fortitude, strength of discipline, strength of character, and just fortitude and all that means helped you to prevail all these years?
I think all that goes into it. And also knowing who you are and not feel demeaned in front of a person because of race. Race just never had that kind of problem with me. I always been accepted everywhere I go. I try to show people that we have a certain kind of class. And I just never had a lot of problems, not racial-wise anyway.
How about your own personal habits? And obviously,
I always had good habits.
Yep.
Yeah, all good habits. I tried to live good because I'm trying to live to be 100. So from here on out, I got to be careful. But listen, I have a good life. I feel wonderful.
Good.
Good health. And I don't do things that will destroy your health. Take care of the body. And the body will take care of you. But now if you do things to your body, well, then you're limiting your time, because then you're taking a chance on the outside things like diabetes, high blood pressure. These are the things, and stress, these are the things that destroy the body. I've outlived all those things. I've outlived anxiety, and I just don't have the problems most people have.
Well, how did you deal with anxiety before you outlived it?
Danced it.
Exercise.
Dance.
Music. Norma, before we say goodbye, give me the beat.
Give me the beat.
Give me the beat.
Get on the beat, Bill. There
You got
we
it?
go. There you go.
Okay, I'm on
Get
the beat
the
now.
beat.
This is Bill Boggs
Okay.
with Norma Miller at the Lenox Lounge for My Generation.
Thank
now
you.
let's dance. Thank you, Norma.
Thank you.